Welcome to a live Kerfefe break on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. Hello to all the wrong knitters, the wrong thinkers, the wrong sitters, the wrong speakers, and the wrong gamers, and the wrong, what else is there? You know, the, the wrong crocheters, the wrong readers. Welcome. This is a live show, if you're new here, that I do on Mondays and Fridays at 1 o'clock Central. That's our new time. And we sometimes have guests. This past Friday, we had a panel show where we discussed the movie Nefarious. And it was a Christian panel show. It was a weirdo Christian panel show, which we're going to do more of. Maybe we're trying to figure out how often, maybe once a month. But that was a lot of fun. That was a little different. And then sometimes I have a co-host or an interview guest, and then sometimes we just I talk about what's in the news, what's on my mind, and see what's on your mind in the chat. So welcome. Right before we started, Two Sisters and Some Yarn, thank you. One of my mods texted me to let me know that Peewee Herman had passed away. And this one hits me really hard. A lot of times I don't understand when a celebrity passes away. Um, I do understand the emotion and then the feelings for someone you don't know, who had an impact on you, but sometimes I don't understand, I guess the extent of it, that because you did not know this person in real life, you knew their art, you interacted with their art, and but I think this one I understand it. I've actually felt like crying. I was like, Peewee, not Peewee. He's so, I don't know. I should talk about this for a second, then we'll get into our topic because I wanted to talk about the Facebook files. But Peewee Herman is just, there's something about him, the character. Of course, it's Paul Rubens who created the character. He's the brilliant comedian who passed away, who created Peewee. But I think he was so tied to that character, and that everyone thinks of him as Peewee. And in fact, his writing partner was Phil Hartman. Some people don't know that. Phil Hartman from SNL and Groundlings. They met at Groundlings. They developed that character together, and they had a falling out at some point because Phil Hartman told him, "You have to do other things. You can't just do Peewee because you're going to be tied to that character." And they had a disagreement about that. And I know that when Phil Hartman passed away, tragically, he was murdered by his crazy wife, which is another rabbit hole, a terrible story. But when he passed away, Paul Rubens had said something to the effect of, he really regretted that they never made up, that they never came back together before Phil Hartman was taken. But anyway, despite what Phil Hartman had said, he did become tied to that character. And so people just think of him as Peewee. And I think he just got used to that and was like, that's my contribution. That is what people love. And that's what I'm going to do. And of course, he stepped away for a very long time because he was caught in an adult theater. And being someone who was on a children's program, of course, parents were outraged, and he stepped away from public life and from performance for a very long time. And Andrew Joyner says, "Who's Peewee?" Peewee Herman, the comedy character. He is, I think, one of the best comedy creations and characters ever. I will say that. And whenever you do these lists about favorite movies, and Peewee Herman's Big Adventure is, to this day, in my top 10 favorite movies. It is an excellent comedy. It holds up into adulthood. It still holds up. And what I like about his comedy is that he just brought this sense of childlike joy to everything he did. He just had this spirit about him. And he's so silly. You couldn't help but laugh. You would have to be a humorless, which there are a lot of humorless people, like a completely joyless person, not to crack up at least once at something he did, because he just was so silly. But I love silly comedy. I love it. And yeah, yes. Dion says that was his magic. And And then when he came back to live performance years later, and I think it was one of either his very first show or right at the beginning of the tour, one of my friends, one of my good friends, who's also since passed away, he had become very successful in his career and made a lot of money, and he was very generous with his friends, and he bought us all front row tickets and a VIP meet and greet or something for the show when Peewee Herman came to Los Angeles. And so we went to the show. It was great. It was like a live Pee-wee's Playhouse. And afterwards, at the Q&A, at the meet and greet thing, he started crying, and he was talking about what it felt like to come back to performance after so long, and the mistakes he had made. And he seemed like a person who had wrestled with things. I don't know, who knows, I don't know him. But it was very touching. And anyway, I loved his comedy as a kid, and I think it holds up as an adult, and I still use a lot of his lines. I mean, even silly things like if my husband and I are having a serious conversation and one person's like, "I'm sorry," and the other one's like, I know you are." And then we can't help but go, "But what am I?" I know you are, but what am I? Like, even in a serious moment, it's just levity. Rib Rascal says, I'm crying right now, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, it made me emotional, which is weird. I don't usually get this emotion. I get sad, but I don't usually get emotional when a celebrity, someone you don't know in real life passes, but here we are. Okay, so for people who don't know who he is, there are some people, maybe young people don't know who he is. I tried showing Pee-wee Herman's Big Adventure to one of my friends, um, preteens. They were hanging out at my house, and their mom was at my house, and we were trying to show them Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and they're too cool for it. He was like, "This is a funny. Nothing's happening fast enough." So maybe young people won't like it. But here, this I found this. It was a best clip. So we're not going to watch the whole thing, but just a couple of these clips. This is who he. This is who he was. This is what he did. This was his character.
Why don't you make me?
Why don't you make me?
Because I don't make monkeys. I just train them.
I meant to do that. I want to see Francis.
Francis is busy.
Busy doing what?
He's having his bath.
Oh, really? Where are they hosing him down?
Is this something you could share with the rest of us, Amazing Larry? Stolen.
Why? What's the significance? I don't know.
It's like you're unraveling a big cable knit sweater.
That someone keeps knitting
And knitting and knitting.
and knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting.
If there are any of the wrong knitters watching, any of the politically incorrect knitters, you ladies should cut a promo for your channel, Politically Incorrect Knitters, with this, or Blocked Magazine. Or you just he's like, we talk about culture and politics and knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting. It's so silly.
Let's go up and get some fresh air, all right?
What for?
Because it's hot in here.
Hot? Who's hot? Feels just fine to me. I feel just perfect. In fact, I can't remember when I felt quite so cozy down here.
Your help. I don't need the police,
And I don't need you. I don't need anybody.
blasting better heads on boils.
Why don't you take a picture? It'll last longer.
Be sure and tell them Large Marge sent ya.
But what? Everyone I know has a big butt. Come on, Simone, let's talk about your big butt.
I'll say. I'm going to start a paper route right now.
Okay, I said we were gonna watch right now, Mr. Herman. I said we were gonna watch the whole thing, so I have to stop. You can find more Pee-wee Herman clips. You can watch the movie if you haven't seen it. He's just very, I don't know. He's just very delightful. His comedy just makes me laugh. So Twee Girl says keeps knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting. Yes. Um, a nitwit. Yeah. You guys. So okay. This is so non-PC. I love it. It's just the silliest. Even now, when some hateful person, usually a woke person, not always, but the kind that just come out of nowhere and attack you on your own page on Facebook or what have you, and just try and be mean, and they're not there to have a civil conversation where they disagree. They're just there to call you names and be a jerk and be a mean person and a hateful person while saying that you're hateful. Whenever that happens, sometimes I'll just say, like, I'll just do a Peewee meme where he's like, "I know you are, but what am I?" It's so they're being so childish anyway. I feel like, look, I can get a little childish meme. Peewee's a good go-to. I know you are, but what am I? And so even, I think about Peewee Herman almost every week. You should, and Amazon, my recent searches, because I had some points and was looking for some fun stuff to buy with points, and I got those fun trick glasses, but I was looking and I've been looking for a while now, for a Pee Wee Herman costume that's sized for women, but they have one, but it's sold out of the small size, and so I'll go back there and see if it's still there. And I just looked this week, it's not. There's a really expensive one on there, that's sized for men, but I'm gonna wait. But, yeah, I don't know. I think he's just one of my favorite comedians. Okay, that's it. I'm rambling. I don't have collected thoughts on it yet. I just thank you for letting me know right before I started, though, because I would have, two sisters and some yarn said I wanted to let you know so you wouldn't see it in a chat or something. So I really appreciate it. Okay. We are going to talk about the Facebook files today. And yeah, let me think. Do I have other announcements? Yesterday, I went and flyered. My husband helped me. I flyered Austin for the upcoming Let Women Speak event on August 12th, which is a Saturday. And I will drop the link below. I don't have it below right now, but I'll drop the link below where you can RSVP if you want to come out. There's also tickets to a private meet and greet afterwards if you want to do that. But if you're in the Austin area and you have something to say, come on out to the Let Women Speak event. There's going to be a lot of women there speaking, and it's yesterday I was pleasantly surprised to see that nobody harassed us or bothered us because they did put Michelle Evans in Texas. She organized this one, and she did put on there like VIP turf meet and greet with real turfs or something. And I was like, oh, somebody's gonna come up and say something. We did have one angry lady wearing a rainbow pen who asked for a flyer, and we gave her one, and that was it. She didn't. I was like, oh, she's gonna come back and start tearing down our signs, but she didn't. So that went well. And then I got to hang out with Daywalker Comedy, who, if you haven't seen her, I did an interview with her here on Deprogrammed. She's so funny. I think, again, one of my favorite kinds of comedy, since we're talking about Paul Reubens and Pee Wee Herman, she does great character work. She just embodies these silly characters. And when I interviewed her, we showed some clips from her SJW's Anonymous sketch and also her gas assault stove sketch. But she has her Epstein Oopstein cleanup service, just ridiculous, silly characters. She's so good at it. Go check out Daywalker Comedy. It was really nice to get to meet her in person. And that's what I did yesterday. So yeah, Austin, August 12th, Let Women Speak. That's coming up. No, Austin popped up. Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas, not Boston. Okay. The Facebook files. So if you guys haven't been watching all of the stuff that's coming out, I don't blame you. I think a lot of people who have already woken up on their own for whatever reason, they're aware of a lot of things that were in the Twitter files and are in the Facebook files before it, sometimes when we talked about the Twitter files, would get people saying, excuse me, they would say, yeah, Twitter censoring. Yeah. They don't have viewpoint diversity. And the government was pressuring Twitter to censor. Yeah, we kind of knew that. was probably happening. But the great thing about it, all this data being released, is that it's evidence to point to. I like being able to do that because a lot of people who are not awake and who are still in the cult, who are still in the echo chamber, whatever you want to call it, who believe the mainstream media and the politicians and big pharma, even they believe big pharma and big social. A lot of them, and even some people with very good intent, they just, because of the echo chamber they're in, they weren't aware of the censorship because their online world was just mostly people that agree with them or on their side of the political spectrum. They didn't see what we saw. They didn't see every week. They didn't have their posts taken down. They weren't shadow banned. They didn't see all these escalations that we saw. They didn't see one by one their friends disappearing off social media for posting studies, scientific studies, fact. That happened. I had a conversation with someone in real life who was open-minded enough to ask me about it. Does that really happen? Is there really censorship? And, this was like 2 or 3 years into the worst of the censorship. It's like, yes, here, I'll tell you about some of it. And I told her about, one of my posts got removed. This was a crazy thing that happened on Facebook. This was during the past the COVID years. I posted a scientific study, okay, peer-reviewed study from a scientific journal. I didn't even add any commentary to it. It was just like, here's something from this scientist, here's the link to the study. And Facebook not only took it down, but this was back when they were busy. They were doing lots of shadow bans. And so what would happen is they would tell you they were shadow banning you, although they wouldn't call it shadow banning, just like Twitter. We found out in the Twitter files. Remember when Twitter's lawyer went on Timcast and lied through her teeth and said, we don't shadow ban? And then the Twitter files came out and we saw, oh yeah, they shadow ban. They just call it what do they call it? Visibility filtering or something. They had a fancy name for it. Somebody in the chat remind me what they called it. It was hilarious. But they basically said, yeah, we make sure your post, the definition of shadow banning, you don't know you're banned. We just make sure that fewer people see your posts and they don't show up in feeds. We tweak the algorithm so you get punished. And we found out from the Twitter files, Twitter was shadow banning lots of scientists and doctors who disagreed with the narrative. They were silencing. This isn't about, the leftists like to say, we're the party of the science. No, you're not. That sounds like a religion, by the way, when you say it that way, the science. They were silencing scientists. They were shadow banning them. So throttling is what some people call it, but limited visibility, I think, is what they called it. Yeah. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Robert Lowry. They had their own fancy, and look at what a dishonest, snaky liar thing to do, to say, I didn't. It's almost like I compare it to Amber Heard when she was saying in those leaked recordings to Johnny Depp, I didn't punch you, I hit you. Okay, what's the real difference? You got a different word for it. Okay, that was what Twitter was doing. We don't shadow ban, we just visibility filter. Okay, yeah. Well, Facebook was doing the same thing. And at least for a while, they would tell you. So what would happen is when I got that post removed, the link to a scientific study, and I got several of these where it would say, you violated our TOS by posting this. We've removed the post, and your posts will now be automatically throttled, or they use a different word, but they won't show up in as many people's feed. They would tell you they were punishing you because, see, they wanted you to change your behavior. They would say, so now your visibility is being filtered or what have you. There are not as many people who are going to see your posts for this many days. They would tell you for, 100 days or whatever. And you would have that little content thing every time you logged in on the back end of your account. It would show you, you still have 37 days until more people can see your posts again. So they would do limited visibility, and they would tell you, at least they started telling you. For a long time, they wouldn't even tell you. You'd have to figure out on your own. Like on Twitter, it's like, I don't think as many people are seeing my posts anymore. And so then when that happened, I will never forget this because I read, they actually said when they took down the scientific study I posted, Facebook, they said, your post violates our new TOS. I'm like, wait, how? It's a scientific study. So I'm thinking, how does this violate? And it said, here's the updates, our new TOS, and they were updating their TOS constantly at this time, right? To the terms of service. Click here to read the new TOS. So I went to their new TOS. I took screenshots of it because it was crazy. And I'm going to summarize it for you. I posted at the time, I think on Twitter, because I couldn't post it on Facebook because then I would have gotten another strike and another, these things would compound. But in summary, it was a lot of legalese. What they had changed their TOS to at this time, they said, we will remove your post if it's misinformation, all these words they were using, right? And if it does this, and if it does that, and it does this, and then they said, and this was the new part, we'll also remove it even if it's factually true, if it could cause vaccine hesitancy. They said this. We are going to remove stuff that's factually true if it could cause vaccine hesitancy. So, in other words, pushing people, manipulating people, doing misinformation, right? To try and get people to make the choice they wanted about a private medical decision. That took precedence over what is factually true, over making sure people were able to see facts. When making this decision, no, we're not going to show anything that's factually true that might cause them to make the decision we don't want them to make. That's what they were saying. It was crazy. There are still things that surprised me. That surprised me at the time, that they were so bold as to put it in there and say, even if it's factually true, we're going to delete it and you'll be shadow banned if it could cause people to choose not to get the jab. Crazy, right? When I told this to the person I mentioned, the friend who was asking me, does this really happen? She was like, I think that's wrong. I'm like, thank you. That is wrong. You should be able to read scientific studies. Facebook should not be appointing itself into the position of deciding what information people can have, what science they can know about, or making the moral decision and, the medical decision of what they think you should do, what medical choices you should make. Why would you ever trust a social media company to make those decisions for you on what information you get to have? I'm not talking about legality here, by the way. People, it's so funny. People who are in the cult always like to go straight to like, oh, private, which is so funny because they actually don't believe a private company can do what they want, because these are the very same people who try and force cake bakers to bake cakes for gay weddings if they don't want to. They try and force them to provide a service. They try and force Muslim women to have to shave the genitals of men. That's happened. They will try and force you to perform a service that you might have religious or moral objections to. So they don't actually believe private companies can do what they want, but they know you believe that. And so they're like, oh, but doesn't a private company can do what it wants? That's the way deceitful snakes operate, is they'll use arguments they don't believe in. They'll use it over here, but they won't use it over here. They don't apply it universally. They just use whatever in the moment is going to help them forcefully get their way, or in their mind, win an argument. And so they'll say, oh, a private company can do what they want. I do believe a private company can do what it wants. And I'm not talking about the legality here. I'm talking about the ethics, the morality. Is it right? I'm not talking about, is it legal? Is it right? Is it right for Facebook to behave this way? I don't think so. So here, let's pull up some of the stuff. some of the Facebook files. First, I'll pull up a couple of news articles, then we're going to look at some of the files themselves. Okay. So here's an article from the Free Beacon. Make this a little larger. Headline: Biden White House pressured Facebook to censor COVID posts, according to files released by the GOP. The Biden White House pressured Facebook executives to remove posts about COVID-19, including claims that the virus was man-made, according to internal company communication released by the House Judiciary Committee. Here's a quote. A quote can right, like shadow banning, rather than demoting and labeling claims that COVID is man-made, asked Facebook's president of global affairs, Nick Clegg, in a July 2021 email to colleagues obtained by the Wall Street Journal. This is where the Facebook files is being published, is the Wall Street Journal. The Twitter files were published on Twitter. Of course, there's a lot of respected journalists who are a part of who were releasing parts of the Twitter files and who are commenting on the Facebook files. And to the people in the echo chamber, it doesn't matter if it's someone like Glenn Greenwald or Matt Taibbi. Like, as soon as they, that brainwashed cult thinking is, oh, well, they're releasing the Twitter files or they're commenting on the Facebook files. Oh, they must be crazy right wingers now. That's stupid. You're a stupid person if you say things like that. I'm sorry. I should be a little more gentle, but that's a dumb thing to say. Even if you're you could be an intelligent person saying something very dumb. Okay, so the Wall Street Journal has published this. So he says, can someone remind me why we were removing rather than demoting and labeling claims that COVID is man-made? Quote, we were under pressure from the administration and others to do more. Facebook's vice president of content policy responded. Speaking of the Biden administration, we shouldn't have done it. I'm glad you admitted that now. We shouldn't have done it. Yeah, because now the mainstream, the press at some point started saying, oh, okay, remember how we were it was article after article of us making fun of anyone who even asked, like, hey, where did this virus come from? Maybe we should try to figure out, maybe somebody should do some investigative journalism and see where it came from. And remember how it was just the press just mocked that completely and was like, anybody who has any questions whatsoever, they are, first of all, they said falsely that we were all alleging that it came from a lab. No, people were questioning, what if it did? Can we find out? And they just write you off as like, well, you're saying it came there definitively. Okay. And then they were saying that's crazy and that's conspiracy theory. And they did manipulative, dishonest things like the Lancet letter, which was all these scientists, many of whom had a conflict of interest, saying in the letter, we don't have a conflict of interest, and we're here to tell you it definitely didn't come from a lab. That got published. Crazy talk, right? And so those of us who were awake this whole time, not the ones in the echo chamber who never saw any of this, but we saw, if you posted anything, even questioning the origin of the virus, it got taken down. People were getting banned. The posts were taken down. Some people lost their Facebook accounts, their Twitter accounts. You couldn't even ask the question. And what did all the sheep do? They started treating it like they're programmed to do, like they did with ivermectin. Oh, remember how they all reacted to that? Oh, it's just horse medicine. It's all horse medicine. They just start repeating. They all start repeating the same thing. They all did the same thing with the COVID origin. Oh, you believe it came from a lab. You're so stupid, man. Really? What's more likely? It originated by coincidence in the same place where a lab exists to do this kind of research and to manipulate viruses just like this, and to do gain of function research on viruses just like this, to make them more contagious and more deadly for humans, is it more likely that it escaped from that lab, whether by accident or on purpose, or that it jumped several species in a wet market with a bat, or like you guys say we're the gullible one? Are you crazy? Like, and so cut to all these years later, and now that that's not a pressing question anymore, the narrative, the spin meisters, right? They're finally like, oh yeah, it probably did. So now the mainstream media is like, yeah, it probably did come from the lab. We're going to say that all this time later, now that people have moved on. The biggest, I want to pause here for a second, because the thing that makes me so righteously angry about this is that Obama had banned gain of function research. He had banned this kind of research in the US. Okay. And then what happened? They took it to countries like China. Fauci and others took it to countries like China. We were still paying for it through NIH grants, taxpayers. We were giving money. There were grants that NIH gave to Eco Health Alliance, and the Eco Health Alliance, based in New York, was funding this research in the Wuhan lab. And the head of Eco Health Alliance is that Peter guy, the same one who wrote the Lancet letter and got all the other scientists to sign it, telling everyone, hey guys, it didn't come from the lab, our lab. We don't have a conflict of interest. We're not going to mention that we've got all this money from the NIH to do this research here at this lab. Isn't that shady? It's so shady. So this is what makes me angry, is because we were still funding gain of function research to engineer COVID viruses to be deadlier and more contagious for humans. We were still paying for that. And then this virus appears, which most likely came from this lab where we were funding the creation of it. Okay. And I couldn't have this conversation 2-3 years ago. It would have been yanked and I would be banned from YouTube. I'm taking a chance. I feel like I can have this conversation now. Things have come around enough that I can have it now. But this virus escapes one way or the other. I don't know if it was on purpose. I don't know if it was by accident. It doesn't matter to me very much, because regardless, it did what it did. It took lots of lives. It also was used by tyrants and authoritarians to impose lockdowns, which shut down lots of small businesses. People lost their whole family's business. People lost their jobs. It was used to coerce people into getting a new kind of quote unquote vaccine that wasn't around long enough to even do a longitudinal study. So nobody really knew. Still don't know what the long-term effects are going to be. And people were shamed and discriminated against and mocked and told that they were murderers for not choosing to make that particular medical decision for themselves. So all of this evil came from this virus. And because we weren't allowed at the very beginning to have that conversation, that's something we could have all been united on. Like all of the American public, I mean, the world. Thank you, babe. My husband just brought me a cup of coffee. It's very sweet. We could have been united on figuring out where this virus came from. Do we want to be funding research like this in other countries, like to get around the ban on doing it here. We decided we don't, Obama banned it here. We don't want to do this kind of research. We think it's unethical. So why are we still paying for it in other places? We could have had that conversation. But you know what that would have meant? It would have meant the people were united against the elite. And so what did they do? They prevented the conversation from happening. And to keep us from being united on that, they made it all about whether or not you're getting the jab, whether or not you wear a mask. They used existing tribal divisions, the existing divisions of right and left, which is so stupid nowadays. Right and left doesn't matter. Not today. I know a lot of you people think it does. I still talk to people all the time who think they still think it matters. You are being fooled. They are using the right left thing to keep you divided. So they exploited existing right left divisions, and they tried to tie people's positions on lockdowns and masks and the vaccine. They tried to tie that to the existing right left thing. It did work, but not to the degree that they had hoped. That's why we saw articles in CNN and other places where the journalists were confused. They were like, wait a minute, I'm confused. It's not all the people who haven't gotten the vaccine yet, the ones they called the vax hesitant, right? Those of us who didn't get it, they were like, they're not all Republicans. In fact, there's a large percentage of Democrats who didn't get it. They're like confused because what they tried to do was say right wingers do this and left wingers do that. But there were still people who didn't fall for that crap, who lined up along like actual philosophical lines. There were still a lot of people on the left who didn't fall for that junk, and who, I've mentioned this before, but in my small town, Georgetown, Texas, the people who were protesting the mask mandates every Sunday were mostly leftists out there. At least at first, it was a lot of hippies and a lot of, crystal wearing, tie-dyed shirt wearing hippies who were distrustful of big pharma for good reason. And so that conditioning, that sort of like fall in line with your right left tribe and your brethren, didn't work on them. By the way, it also didn't work on some authoritarians on the right. I had family members who were very conservative, a few who lean pretty authoritarian in terms of believing the government should be able to tell you what to do with your bodies and stuff. And even though the messaging was the right wing opposes the lockdown, the right wing opposes the mask mandate, no, my conservative authoritarian family members were still like, you should have to wear the mask. You should have to wear. They still went with philosophy. They still went with, I believe the government should tell you, what to do with your body. So, but my point is, for the most part, in the mainstream, it did work. And most of the people who are not passionately aligned or intimately aligned with their beliefs, but rather they are intimately aligned with their tribe, those people followed what they were told their tribe was doing. Because they didn't examine their beliefs. They looked at what they're told. Most people are followers. The Ash conformity experiment. Look that up if you haven't read about it. I think if you read that, it's hard to come away from that without the realization that most people, like 70% of people, are followers. So they successfully divided us. And all that people were talking about and arguing about was the stuff that they created. Their COVID response. It was the lockdowns, it was the mask mandates, it was whether or not you're getting the jab. And so we weren't talking about, where did this thing come from? Did it come from this lab where we're funding gain of function research? Should we be funding that research? We never had that conversation nationally. And then now, 3 years later, when the mainstream media is like, oh yeah, it probably came from the lab. Do people care anymore to have that conversation? No. Everybody's moved on. And I don't know if we'll ever hold anyone accountable for that virus escaping in whatever way it did. I don't know if we'll ever have that conversation, because I tend to look at things like the Kennedy assassination. All these years later, has the public ever demanded? No, we moved on. That bothers me too, by the way. It's like, when are we going to demand accountability? Like, we really want to know what happened. No, they know that. They know people move on. If you can just squash, if you can censor and suppress for a certain period of time and redirect what the public is arguing about and divide them and exploit existing divisions to do that, then they're going to move on. They're not going to be united to hold any of the elite accountable. Yes, wicked psyched. They shut down the lab theory early on. They did. They did shaming, they did censorship, they did suppression. Yeah. So that was a bit of a tangent, but a rant, but I felt like I had to say that because that still bothers me to this day, that we could have been united on the question of where did this virus come from? Who funded this kind of research? We did? Should we be funding it? Like, that never ever happened, and that's infuriating. And this brings all that back up. Yeah. So here, to go back to the article from the Free Beacon. This was Facebook's vice president of content policy saying, yeah, we were under pressure from the Biden administration and others to do more, removing stuff that claims COVID was man-made. And he says we should not have done it. The emails date to the spring and summer of 2021, when the Biden administration launched its campaign to promote the COVID vaccine. Administration officials feared that, quote, false information, end quote, on Facebook. It's such a Orwellian Brave New World, right? They push false information, and then they're like, we're trying to get rid of false information. Okay. Administration officials feared that false information on Facebook was dissuading people from getting the shot. And they pushed Facebook to, quote, more aggressively police, they use the word police even, more aggressively police vaccine-related content, according to the Wall Street Journal. Quote, they're killing people, President Joe Biden said that July. You're killing people. The Republican-led House Judiciary Committee acquired the internal communications as part of an investigation into the Biden administration's alleged efforts to censor social media posts about COVID-19 vaccines and other topics. Quote, these documents begin to reveal the pressure that Facebook and other social media companies were under to alter their content moderation policies and remove protected speech to appease the federal government, particularly the Biden White House. Representative Jim Jordan, chair of the House panel, said Thursday. 3 months before Clegg's July 2021 email discussion, Facebook's parent company Meta said it would stop banning posts claiming that coronavirus was man-made or manufactured, given, quote, the increasing debate about the virus's origin. You know what? It's not that the debate started increasing in 2021. It's actually that it had died because you guys had censored all the people for over a year who had questions about it, who wanted to debate it. You had already booted them off of your platforms. You had already removed their posts. It's not that the debate suddenly increased in 2021. No, it's that enough time had passed that the mainstream news sources and politicians and figures were like, I guess we should kind of go ahead and say this is probably true now. It's been long enough, we can do it now. Quote, there is likely a significant gap between what the White House would like us to remove and what we are comfortable removing, the Facebook vice president said. The executive listed as an example the White House's desire for Facebook to remove humorous or satirical content about the vaccine side effects. This is true. I'm going to pull up another article in a second. The White House pressured Facebook to remove jokes. And we know this too, because if you were in the awake world during the past couple of years, you saw this happen as well. You saw entire comedy accounts get banned. You saw satire get banned. My church on the Square in Georgetown, Texas, the whole way I found them was because they put up a Facebook ad, and they opened right at the beginning of the pandemic and the lockdowns. And that's how several of our church members found the Church on the Square, was the very first Facebook ad. So my husband and I were at the very first service because of that ad. And a few months down the road, I'm not sure how much longer down the road, Facebook removed my church's ability to advertise, which is how they brought in most of their original members, and reached us. And so Facebook told them that their posts violated community standards. This is a common story. Again, if you're awake, you know this. You know that they do this. And they didn't bother to tell them what violated community standards or how they could fix it, or, could you appeal or argue, or no, it's a kangaroo court. It's you're guilty. You violate community standards, so you're not going to be able to advertise with us anymore and to reach people. And most likely, I think it was the sermon that my pastor did that went viral, about his view that the church as a whole failed people during the pandemic. And in which he criticized ritualistic mask wearing and other things. And I'm pretty sure that's why, to this day, my church cannot advertise on Facebook. That hasn't been reversed yet, as much as they are saying here, they're starting to turn things around, maybe. I don't think so. Not enough. Let's continue with this article. So here we go. Quote, "The White House has previously indicated that it thinks humor should be removed if it is premised on the vaccine having side effects," which the vaccine does. "So we expect it would similarly want to see humor about vaccine hesitancy removed," the vice president of Facebook said. "I can't see Mark in a million years being comfortable with removing that, and I would not recommend it," Clegg responded, in apparent reference to CEO Mark Zuckerberg. In another July email to colleagues just before a meeting with the U.S. Surgeon General, Facebook's meeting with the U.S. Surgeon General, before meeting with the U.S. Surgeon General about vaccine misinformation, Clegg wrote, quote, "My sense is that our current course, in effect explaining ourselves more fully, but not shifting on where we draw the lines, is a recipe for protracted and increasing acrimony. Given the bigger fish we have to fry with the Biden administration, data flows, etc., that doesn't seem a great place for us to be in. So grateful for any further creative thinking on how we can be responsive to their concerns," he says. The White House said its discussions with Meta were, quote, "aimed at promoting the adoption of vaccines and other public health goals." You evil, evil bastards. Quote, "In 2021, in the darkest days of the pandemic, of course, the Biden administration was working every possible angle to keep people alive," a spokesman for the Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee said in a statement. You liar. I apologize if you tuned in for my rosy, sometimes gracious outlook, which thank you very much. People have told me that's part of why they like to listen to me. I feel pretty angry today. A lot of contempt about this. I know I'm laughing because I laugh through everything I have to, but I'm kind of speechless about it, about what's happened in this country and beyond. Someone in one of the comments for the video before I started said, I can't remember. It was a very unkind way of saying your language is America centric. He was, no offense, dude, whoever you were, but they were like, they commented on the video. They were like, very close minded or something like that to think this only affected America. I'm like, well, I don't think that. I apologize if my language implied that I think that. I don't. It's just I happen to be American. I know a little bit more about our politicians here and what our government did. But of course, I know the UK did this as well. I know this happened in other Western countries. So it's not just America. I live in America. John says, America has gone through dark times before. Let's hope we get back to our senses. Yes, I hope so too. Mary, name one Republican congressman or woman who does anything. You guys name one. I don't know. Here in Texas, I appreciate some of the things Ted Cruz says. I think he's very smart, but how much does he get done? I don't know. Feeling kind of skeptical today. So if you have something to encourage me, post it. Please post it in the chat. Tell me a congressman, Republican or Democrat or independent, who's getting things done. Pirate Tomsky. Hey, this is one of my international mods. Give it up for Pirate Tomsky, who says, how dare you live in America, Keri? And then Socrates McGoat. Socrates McGoat says, are there any Aussies or Kiwis in the chat? How did y'all survive? Yeah. You guys had it much worse. I know this. I do know this. So share your thoughts in the chat or in the comments. Yeah, they were saying congressman, though, David, and DeSantis is a governor, and I do think DeSantis has gotten a lot done. I am a fan. As a governor, I think he's been great for Florida. Trying to think of a congressman like that. Okay. Let's pull up this other article, because this is the one about humor and how they tried to censor humor. Of course he did, these demons. I'm using the word demons kind of jokingly, guys. Don't flip out. The Hill. This is an article from The Hill. Facebook files show that Biden's administration even targeted jokes for censorship. Yes. Again, if you've been awake during all of this, we all know this. We know this. But it's great that this is coming out, that the evidence for this is coming out, because there are people on the left, some of them very well intentioned, who don't know this. They just, I know it sounds shocking because of what we've seen the past 3 years, but that's because of the world we travel in, and they're not in that world. They travel in a different world, and they haven't seen people, comedy accounts getting pulled down. They haven't seen friends disappearing off social media. They haven't seen posts getting pulled down for posting scientific studies. They don't even see those studies. That's why they're pulled down, so they don't see them. So this is new information for a lot of people. And I would say, if you're someone who's been awake, one of the things I hate the most is I just hate it when people are so condescending and they're so like, uncharitable to people who open their eyes late or later than they did, and they're unwelcoming. Not everybody's like that. It's fortunately very few, but I see that kind of attitude crop up from, here and now, and it just bothers me. It's like, if you have that kind of attitude in life where you're like mean to people who open their eyes late or later than you did, then what is your point? Why are you even here? Why do you wake up in the morning? Because it's obviously not to sway people to your point of view, because being mean to people and exclusionary and kicking people out, being cruel to people who wake up late, that's not an incentive for anyone to come around to your point of view. That's actually a disincentive. That's what the woke do. Why would anyone want to come around to your point of view if you're just going to kick them when they get there? I hate that attitude. It's a human thing. It crops up in people to varying degrees. Some people are full of that attitude. Some people have just a little of it here and there. I have a little of it here and there. If you have a little of it here and there, like, try and root it out, because otherwise, what's the point? Seriously, why do you wake up if you don't actually want people to wake up and come? Why do you wake up in the morning if you don't want them to wake up to what's happening in the world? If you just want to kick people and be, oh, great, you were right. That's it? You just want to be right first? Why? Okay, again, on a tangent. Sorry. I'm in one of those moods today where I'm just like, and I don't like this. And I don't like that. Judson Pinson says, I wake up in the morning because I need to pee and be grumpy. That's what I am today. And that's why I'm wearing the smiley face hat. Cheer up a bit. Pirate Tomsky says, I like the old America, the Team America. Okay, so here. Facebook files show that Biden's administration even targeted jokes for censorship. This is new information for some people. COVID-19, the flu, and the common cold all walk into a bar. The bartender asks, what is this? Some kind of sick joke. Indeed, it is one of the many COVID-19 jokes that raged on the internet during the pandemic. What citizens did not know is that the Biden administration was tracking the laugh lines for censorship, along with other views it found neither funny nor helpful. The newly released Facebook files revealed a concerted effort by the Biden administration to censor not just false information. You have to put that in quotes, the Hill, okay? But anyway, not just false information, but also true information, yes, along with jokes that its functionaries simply found annoying. Months ago, I testified before Congress on censorship after Elon Musk's release of internal Twitter communications, also known as the Twitter files. I warned that the government was engaging in censorship by surrogate, using corporate allies to do indirectly what is legally prevented from the government doing directly. If you are new, if you're on the left and you're watching this or hate watching this or whatever, if you're here and this is new information, I just want to point something out to you because I know what it was like when I was on the left. You may not think I'm not trying to be insulting, but you may not examine what some of the words you use mean. You may sort of have a tangential attachment to the word, and you may use it to mean one thing without actually looking into, wait a minute, what does this word mean? Look up the word fascism. I know you may think you already know what it means, and it means Trump. Or it means right wingers, or, you may think you know what it means. Just look it up. Please look it up. Fascism is when the government and corporations work in tandem, work together to suppress dissent. Okay. And to push authoritarianism. This is exactly what that definition is talking about. Censorship by surrogate, where the government is using big, huge corporate allies. In fact, the allies who are in charge of the public square and the flow of information and facts, they're using those corporate allies in those key positions to do indirectly what they, the government, are legally prevented from doing. Just look up the definition of fascism, please. Please. Read more about it. You don't have to tell anyone you're doing it. You don't have to be embarrassed at like, hey, maybe I don't know what it means. You don't have to tell anyone. Just go read about it and see what you think. Facebook had refused to open its own files on government censorship efforts. That came to an end when the House Judiciary Committee finally moved to hold Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg in contempt of Congress. The resulting Facebook files confirmed what many of us have suspected for years. Yes, indeed, the emails proved to be a mirror image of what had occurred at Twitter, a massive effort by the government to pressure the company to censor its critics and other dissenting voices. That's called fascism. Facebook executives use similar language to lament the overwhelming effort of the government to censor citizens and its unwillingness to take no for an answer. Over at Twitter, executives described a deluge of demands for censorship from federal officials at the FBI and other agencies. One official wrote that, quote, the FBI has some folks in the Baltimore field office and at headquarters that are just doing keyword searches for violations. This is probably the 10th request I've had to deal with in the last 5 days. That's how the FBI is spending our taxpayer dollars, by the way. They're spending our money, the money you make at your job, to employ people, agents, to sit on Twitter and Facebook and just do keyword searches looking for citizens to then ask the corporation to censor. It's like a kind of reach around so they can do what is illegal for them to do. In January of 2020, Twitter's then director of policy and philanthropy, Carlos Magne Jr., expressed unease about the pressure coming from the FBI. Quote, they are probing and pushing everywhere they can, including by whispering to congressional staff, he said. One email from August of 2022 sent, quote, long lists of newspapers, tweets, or YouTube videos deemed to be voicing, quote, anti-Ukraine narratives. See, it's beyond COVID even. And we know this if we've been watching it happen. It's not just COVID. And do you think they're going to stop? Do you think it's just one political party? Because I don't. This precedent has been set. The government is going to keep working with corporations in this way unless we put a stop to it. Unless we care about stories like this. If you're someone who I'm calling awake, who's been awake during all of this, in fact, I would encourage you to be welcoming to people who are just now opening their eyes, because they did such a great job of dividing us. And wouldn't it be great if that failed in the end and a lot of people woke up? Yes, even very late. Even satirical and comedy sites were reportedly designated by the government for removal. Now we know that Facebook executives were facing the same insatiable government desire for censorship. In an April 2021 email, Nick Clegg, Facebook's president for global affairs, wrote to colleagues that Andy Slavitt, a senior advisor to Biden, who was steering COVID-19 policy, quote, was outraged, not too strong a word to describe his reaction, that Facebook did not remove this post, end quote. The post was actually a humorous meme shared by a user named Timothy McComas. It featured actor Leonardo DiCaprio's character from the film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, pointing at a TV with a beer and cigarette in hand. We all know this meme, right? The caption read, 10 years from now, you will be watching TV and hear, did you or a loved one take the COVID vaccine? You may be entitled, ... That is funny. And by the way, it's not going to take 10 years, I don't think. It's not, unfortunately. This is, one, very funny. Two, it points to truth. Okay. So of course they hate it. Slavitt was not amused. More importantly, he was irate that others were amused. Hundreds of thousands of others. He explained that McComas had to be censored because such humor, quote, demonstrably inhibits confidence in COVID vaccines amongst those the Biden administration is trying to reach, end quote. This, again, infuriates me. Slavitt, you never reached me, ever. And you censored a lot. And I'm sure you ended up getting them to take this down eventually, or I know you took down a lot of things like it. And you never reached me, and you never will. And I'm never taking your stupid shot. There was a point at which I was like, you know what? Way down the road, once I've there's been enough time to see a longitudinal study. I'm still open to it. Now I'm just thoroughly convinced that you guys, there's something gross happening. The fact that you pushed it so hard and had to censor and use force and coercion and cause people to lose their jobs in order to take it, and the fact that you were trying to bribe us with money and cars and hot dogs and beers, I'm like, no. Now it's like a matter of principle. Like, not taking your stupid jab. It makes yeah, just a little angry today. I hope that's okay. Just venting, guys. At the same time, the White House was targeting those with well-founded questions over the efficacy of masks. Yeah, you could not even post scientific studies about the efficacy of masks. They would get taken down. I ask you, if you're on the left and you think you're in the party of science, why? I was in the left my whole adult life until 2016, 17. Around that time was when I started leaving. Now I'm like nowhere. I know you guys will say I'm on the right, whatever. If you're a person on the left watching this, you can say that if you want. I don't care where you think I am. But the point is, I still consider myself liberal in several policies. I still consider myself a liberal when it comes to science and to sharing information and to opposing censorship. And I actually believe in you should be able to post all these studies so people can weigh all the information and make the most informed decision. But you guys, while you were calling yourself the party of science, you were supporting censorship of doctors and scientists and scientific studies that said anything that went against the big pharma and big social and government media narrative. That's crazy. You were not in the party of science. You're in the party of censorship. It's like a fundamentalist religion. That's what it became. That's what we saw once we got out of that crap and saw what was happening. That's why there's so many of us disaffected liberals. I had a friend who just recently started opening her eyes to some things and told me, and she was like, I just saw some of this. I kind of understand now. I'm like, thank you. Praise God. I mean, she's not a Christian, she's atheist, but I'd say praise God that something reached her and she's able to see some of this. And so we had this excited conversation where I was saying to her, exactly, this is why I oppose all this stuff, because it's not liberal. And she's like, it's not liberal. Censorship is not liberal. I'm like, thank you. Welcome to the scary great unknown. Get ready to be called a right winger. I know that's going to hurt you. You know, for some people in particular, that's like a death sentence. They can't. That's what I think prevents them from opening their eyes sometimes, because they're like, when then what happens? You go out to nomad land and you get called all the things I've been called, and you know, but be honest. If you're on the left, be honest. If they're censoring studies about the efficacy of masks, they're censoring studies about, they were censoring studies about ivermectin. Can I say that word now on YouTube without being banned? We used to have to use creative language or else have a video taken down immediately and a channel banned. We'll see what happens. This is a good test video. I took horse medicine. Horse medicine. So stupid. It is one of the most prescribed medications for humans in the world. And they convinced people that it was horse meds. Yes, it's prescribed for horses too. You know what else is? Aspirin. Oh, you know what else horses take? They drink water. Water. It's horse liquid. Water. I drank some horse liquid this morning, aka H2O. Mr. Ed Meds. That's what I should call it. Yes, medicine often crosses over between human and bacteria. Yes. Okay. We'll continue. We'll get back to the article. Thank you guys for hanging out, by the way. Thank you guys in the chat. I'm not reading the chat too closely because I'm trying to stay in this article, and I'm also ranting a bit today, as you've seen. But I'll check in there once in a while. Yes. Arnala, horses like sugar cubes, so sugar cubes are horse food. Yes, that's by their reasoning and what they tried to push on us. That's exactly true. I had some coffee this morning. Now, coffee is not a horse liquid, but some people put horse food into it. They put sugar into it, which is horse food. Okay, let's continue. We'll get back into this paragraph. At the same time, the White House was targeting those with well-founded questions over the efficacy of masks, the relative protection of natural immunities, and the harm posed to children in the pandemic measures. Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg wrote, quote, "We are facing continued pressure from external stakeholders, including the Biden White House, to remove posts criticizing COVID-19 vaccines." As at Twitter, the pressure on Facebook was unrelenting. Even with a massive censorship partnership in place, President Joe Biden continued to accuse big tech of, quote, "killing people," end quote, by not censoring more citizens. Many of those targets are now recognized as having raised valid objections, including the origins of the virus in a Chinese lab. I said this recently, and I'm online. I'm just going to say it here. If you are on the left, if you were in the echo chamber, you didn't get out, and you are now finding out slowly that you were wrong about a lot of things, including where the virus came from, things like that. If you're just now learning that you got a lot of things wrong and you were conned, I'm going to say, maybe some people won't be this charitable, but I'm going to say it's not entirely your fault. You were conned by big social, mainstream media, celebrities, politicians, big social, big pharma, all of it. If you're just finding that out, though, that you got a lot of things wrong, you might want to turn to your one conspiracy theory friend, the one you call a crazy nut job, whatever. Just ask that person, just this is an experiment. Just hear me out. Just ask them, what else do you think I might be wrong about? just a test. Just see. Just, if you were wrong about a lot, okay? An August 2nd, 2021 Facebook email said that the company's leadership, quote, asked misinfo policy to brainstorm some additional policy levers we can pull to be more aggressive against misinformation. This is stemming from the continued criticism of our approach from the Biden administration. Facebook officials began to object, but continued to ban users. In one email, a vice president balked that, quote, "The White House has previously indicated that it thinks humor should be removed if it is premised on the vaccine having side effects, so we expect it would similarly want to see humor about vaccine hesitancy removed. There was to be no allowance for humor or even true information that did not advance the government's narrative." This is absolutely true. This happened to me. This is what I described earlier, where I had a post of mine with a link to a scientific study removed, and I was shadow banned for a period afterwards of several months. I was told I was being shadow banned by Facebook, and they directed me to read their new terms of service, which said they would remove things that were factually true if those things might cause vaccine hesitancy. The House has uncovered a myriad of grants given to academic and private groups to blacklist and target those with opposing views, including the posting of true information. So how are you fighting false information if what you're doing is going around making sure you censor true information? I just have that question also. There was an array of government agencies targeting citizens and groups for censorship. In another hearing, I testified on efforts by Jen Easterly, who leads the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, to extend her regulatory authority by declaring that, quote, critical infrastructure includes our cognitive infrastructure. Wow. In which she saw it as her role to build, quote, resilience to misinformation and disinformation. Our cognitive infrastructure. The administration also demanded the removal of malinformation. Oh, yeah. This is when they came up with a new Orwellian term. Do you guys remember this? People were pointing out that some of the stuff they were censoring that was being called misinformation was true. Hey, that's true. Hey, that's a scientific study. Why are you calling that misinformation? So they said, okay, we've got a new word. It's actually malinformation. And that's when it is, quote, this is what they say, quote, based on fact, but used out of context to mislead, harm, or manipulate. Okay, sure. Government-funded groups such as the Stanford Virality Project declared that even, quote, true stories could fuel hesitancy. Yeah, I bet they could. I bet true stories might cause people to be hesitant to take your news shot. I bet if you let people see the truth and you didn't censor, there might be more people who say, hold on a minute, I think I'll wait and make my decision later when more time has passed. The Twitter files showed that this included worrisome jokes. That's in quote. They called it worrisome jokes. The Biden administration and its allies were right about one thing. Jokes can be deadly to a censorship system. For centuries, humor has been the effective way to expose the abusive and often ridiculous efforts of censorship. This is why so many of us have, I think, hopefully more effectively started using humor online to talk about and to get, not just to get through and survive the past few years of craziness, but to also try and get around the bans, getting more skillful with humor. And it's also why I feel so indebted to the memers. And I feel like what the memers do is a work of art. The really funny ones, especially, of course, because the funnier the better. And I have so many friends who make and share hilarious memes, and what they are doing, they make light of it, which is great. They're like, it's no big, I just make memes, but it's so important actually to changing culture, to piercing through propaganda. And yeah, I think the memers are genius. So in case this did not make it through the government corporate censorship screen, here is one that might resonate with the administration and its hosts on social media. A coronavirus walks into a bar. The bartender says, sorry, we don't serve viruses here. The coronavirus replies, well, you're not a very good host. Bum. So he ends with a joke. By the way, that one would not have been censored, Jonathan Turley, because it doesn't promote vax hesitancy. Just saying. That's a great piece. Let's see. I'm going to check in with you guys. Cat Turd too. Yeah, Cat Turd. Very funny. Oh. Force of Light is here. By the way, where is she? Oh, there you are. Thank you for the super chat. Force of Light for $1.99. Thank you. Says people need to be held accountable for this. Yes. Yes. And I don't know if they will be. I really don't. I'm kind of as I mentioned before, something huge like the Kennedy assassination, and the fact that I don't think anyone was held accountable for it who should have been. And we never really found out the answers we were owed. I kind of think no one's gonna be held accountable for this. But I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. I will be appearing on Force of Light later today. So you guys go click on their channel. That'll be at 5:30 Central. So in 3 hours, I'm doing math. Yeah, 3 hours. I'll be there. I love these ladies. Selsworth for $4.99. Thank you so much for the super chat. I recommend checking out the 10th Amendment Center. They expound upon the founding principles of the U.S. the 10th Amendment Center. I don't know if I've ever been to their site. Let me just make a note. Can you guys hear my stomach growling? I think I'm pretty hungry today. All this ranting's got me hungry. Oh, Jamie. Thank you, Jamie. Says congratulations on hitting 18,000 subscribers. Thank you, and thank you guys. Thank you guys for subscribing and sharing the videos and hitting like and commenting, and all that helps. If you want to support the channel, I forgot to say this at the beginning, you can do super chats. You can be a regular subscriber for like $1 a month here at YouTube, or you can subscribe at you can support the show at Locals, Patreon, or Subscribestar, or you can do YouTube memberships. And if you can't do that or don't want to do that, you can also help the channel just by leaving a comment on this video. Helps, because the more engagement in the comments, the more the videos will show up on similar channels as a recommended video. Someday I'll read you guys on the back end. You can see the analytics. I go in there once in a while. It's cool to see the, like, what are the channels that other people who watch your channel watch, and the ones at the very top are interesting. It's like the top 5. Last time I looked, the people who watch my channel, the top 5 are like As Hill versus Babyface. I should tell him he's like number 1, and then it's Peter Boghossian, and I think the Lotus Eaters is on there, and then there's another like Neurotic or someone, and Chrissy Mayer. I think those are like the 5. It changes once in a while who's in the top, but it's kind of funny. It's a good mix of different kinds of channels, and like, how cool is that? Anyway, yeah, leaving a comment helps. So, and I really appreciate it. 18,000. It's been a little over a year that I've been doing the new channel. I really appreciate all the support, guys. I'll take just a minute to say that, because, I had to start all over. I had been podcasting, doing a YouTube channel for a few years, and had pretty for me, it was traumatic knifing in the back that happened, where someone turned out to be not the person I thought they were at all. And had to start over. And it's been actually one of the biggest blessings, like blessings in disguise, in the past few years for me. So it just goes to show you. And even when it was happening, I think there was a part of me that knew this is going to be a blessing in disguise, even though it's really painful right now, unfair, all these things. It's like, I wouldn't change it, because this, just being able to talk about the kind of things I want to talk about without being poo-pooed or told I can't, being able to talk a little bit more about my faith and things like that I didn't anticipate. It's like, oh, that's a nice result of this, is that I can do that, or I can do this, and kind of forced me into a place of independence that I never would have chosen on my own. So it sort of had to happen in that way. Maybe not as cruel as it was. It could have been a little less cruel, God, but I'm still glad. So can you get Melanie Mack on the show soon? Hey, Z Highness. You know what? I was talking with Melanie. I saw her at Chrissy's wedding, and she's going to be on at some point. Hopefully we'll see. I'm going to Europe soon. It would be great if I could record with her before I go to release during that time. I think she's lovely and would love to talk to her. So, okay. Let's continue. We were talking about the Facebook files, and let's just pull up the files themselves. Here we go. I think it's great these are coming out in the Wall Street Journal, because, the Twitter files were released on Twitter. And at that point, the propaganda machine had already done a great job of convincing a lot of people who are in the echo chamber. There are lots of different kinds of echo chambers, but when I say the echo chamber, I'm talking about that mainstream echo chamber that's supported by the media, big social, all of this, big pharma, celebrities, government. So people who are in that echo chamber, they had already been programmed with the idea that Twitter don't read the Twitter files because they are on Twitter, and Elon owns Twitter now, and now Elon's a crazy right winger, and so they had this prejudice against it from the beginning because of where the files were being released. And so I think it's great that the Facebook files are on the Wall Street Journal. I hope that means that more people in the echo chamber, that particular echo chamber, will read them. We'll see. The Facebook files, a Wall Street Journal investigation. Now, it's really cool because they have this divided into pieces, and for any of these pieces, you can learn more. You can go over to the side and read that particular part of the files. So this is at the Wall Street Journal. Facebook Inc. knows in acute detail that its platforms are riddled with flaws that cause harm, often in ways only the company fully understands. That is the central finding of a Wall Street Journal series based on a review of internal Facebook documents, including research reports, online employee discussions, and drafts of presentations to senior management. Time and again, the documents show Facebook's researchers have identified the platform's ill effects. Time and again, despite congressional hearings, its own pledges, and numerous media exposés, the company did not fix them. The documents offer perhaps the clearest picture thus far of how broadly Facebook's problems are known inside the company, up to the chief executive himself. Number 1. Facebook says its rules apply to all. Company documents reveal a secret elite that's exempt. Now, here's a little summary of this first set of files. Mark Zuckerberg, and this is by Jeff Horowitz, Mark Zuckerberg has said that Facebook allows its users to speak on equal footing with the elites of politics, culture, and journalism. That right there is laughable. And that its standards apply to everyone. In private, of course, the company has built a system that has exempted high-profile users from some or all of its rules. The program known as Crosscheck or XCheck was intended as a quality control measure for high-profile accounts. Today, it shields millions of VIPs from the company's normal enforcement, the documents show. Many abuse the privilege, posting material including harassment and incitement to violence that would typically lead to sanctions. Meanwhile, a regular person can get taken down for a meme about side effects of a shot, right? Facebook says criticism of the program is fair and that it was designed for a good purpose and that the company is working to fix it. So here you can listen to a related podcast about this, or you can click continue story, which I have this one just so we can see an example. I have this one pulled up already. Here, let me go to the other tab. Okay, can you guys see this? Let's see. So if you go read more, this is where it will take you. Facebook says its rules apply to all. Company documents reveal a secret elite that's exempt. Okay. The program known as Crosscheck or XCheck was initially intended as a quality control measure for actions taken against high-profile accounts, including celebrities, politicians, and journalists. Today, it shields millions of VIP users from the company's normal enforcement process, the documents show. Some users are, quote, whitelisted, rendering immune. They're rendered immune from the enforcement actions, while others are allowed to post rule-violating material pending Facebook employer reviews that often never come. This is the exact opposite of what happens to us, the plebes, right? We're blacklisted. I know I'm on some blacklist. I know it. But sometimes they tell me, hey, we got you on the blacklist for this amount of time. Your posts are going to be shadow banned. They'll tell you. They use a different word than shadow ban, but that's what it amounts to. But I know I'm on some other kind of list, and many of you watching probably are too. But look, some people, the elite, are whitelisted. And they don't even have to follow the regular rules. They can post incitements to violence. It's cool. They can harass people. It's a little bit like Animal Farm, isn't it? Orwell's Animal Farm. At times, the documents show XCheck has protected public figures whose posts contain harassment or incitement to violence, violations that would typically lead to sanctions for regular users. In 2019, it allowed international soccer star Neymar to show nude photos of a woman who had accused him of rape to tens of millions of his fans before the content was removed by Facebook. Whitelisted accounts shared inflammatory claims that Facebook's fact checkers deemed false, including that vaccines are deadly. Now, again, this is the Wall Street Journal. So, and they're just talking about what Facebook claims false. So this is at a time where if you even implied that you might be worried that this new shot might have lots of side effects that we can't possibly know yet, and maybe one could be expiring. If you even implied that, you'd be taken down, but not if you were on the whitelist. Okay. So information that Facebook's fact checkers deemed false, including that vaccines are deadly, that Hillary Clinton had covered up pedophile rings, and that then President Donald Trump had called all refugees seeking asylum animals, according to the documents. So if you were on the whitelist, you could post these things. A 2019 internal review of Facebook's whitelisting practices marked attorney-client privilege, found favoritism to those users to be both widespread and, quote, not publicly defensible. Quote, we are not actually doing what we say we do publicly, said the confidential review. It called the company's actions, quote, a breach of trust, and added, unlike the rest of our community, these people can violate our standards without any consequences. Despite attempts to rein it in, XCheck grew to include at least 5.8 million users in 2020, documents show. 5.8 million elite. In its struggle to accurately moderate a torrent of content and avoid negative attention, Facebook created invisible elite tiers within the social network. In describing the system, Facebook has misled the public and its own oversight board, a body that Facebook created to ensure the accountability of the company's enforcement systems. And so you can see this screenshot here from the files. And look at this. This is an internal document where they're criticizing it internally. And look what they say here. Context. What is XCheck? XCheck, parentheses, previously known as shielding. Please don't use that term anymore, it says in italics. Please don't call it shielding anymore. Previously known as shielding. Please don't use that term anymore. Is a system for reducing false positives when enforcing against high-profile personalities, entities, and content. It also allows for making nuanced decisions in cases that requires policy deliberations and comms outreach. The system, when set up correctly, works by identifying high-risk people and entities and doing multiple specialist reviews to ensure enforcement decisions are accurate. And then you can see here, what is whitelisting? Special exemptions. That means for a few select members of our community, we are not enforcing our policies and standards. Unlike the rest of our community, these people can violate our standards without consequences. That's a little summary of this screenshot. That's not what's under the whitelisting heading. In June, Facebook told the oversight board in writing that its system for high-profile users was used in, quote, a small number of decisions. But we just saw by the year 2020, it was already 5.8 million people. In a written statement, Facebook spokesman Andy Stone said that criticism of XCheck was fair. Now, when I see XCheck, I can't help but think of shielding. Don't call it that anymore. Shielding. Criticism of XCheck was fair, but added that the system was designed for an important reason, to create an additional step so we can accurately enforce policies on content that could require more understanding. He said Facebook has been accurate in its communications to the board and that the company is continuing to work to phase out the practice of whitelisting. Quote, a lot of this internal material is outdated information stitched together to create a narrative that glosses over the most important point. Facebook itself identified the issues with crosscheck and has been working to address them. Oh, good. Well, if Facebook identified it. Internal documents. Hold on just 1 second. The documents that describe XCheck are part of an extensive array of internal Facebook communications reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. They show that Facebook knows in acute detail that its platforms are riddled with flaws that cause harm, often in ways only the company fully understands. Moreover, the documents show that Facebook often lacks the will or the ability to address them. This is the first in a series of articles based on those documents and on interviews with dozens of current and former employees. I'm going to stop reading this one now. You can read the rest of the first one yourself if you want to, but I've got another one here pulled up that I want to try and hit before I take off. So if you continue down that first page I was on the Wall Street Journal, the Facebook files, there's several others, and I think I'm probably going to cover some more of these in separate videos. Like there's one about how it's called Facebook knows Instagram is toxic for many teenage girls. Company documents show. There's some interesting ones like that, but I just wanted to, and this one hit one of the COVID ones here. So this one in the Wall Street Journal from the Facebook files is called How Facebook Hobbled Mark Zuckerberg's Bid to Get America Vaccinated. This one's really interesting. Company documents show anti-vaccine activists undermined the CEO's ambition to support the rollout by flooding the site and using Facebook's own tools to sow doubt about the COVID-19 vaccine. In mid-March, Mark Zuckerberg used his Facebook page to announce a goal that was both ambitious and personal. He wanted his company to use its formidable resources to push 50 million people towards the COVID-19 vaccine. By the way, this is freaking scary, and this is what the media should have been noticing and commenting on. Why? Why is it Big Social's role? And should we be concerned that Big Social is taking it upon themselves, that this company is taking it upon themselves to influence a private medical decision for 50 million people? That's alarming. But they say that like it's no big deal here. It's fine. In a post and a press release, the chief executive discussed Facebook Inc.'s initiatives to promote vaccines. He unveiled collaborations with global health organizations, and he touted that his company had, quote, already connected more than 2 billion people to authoritative COVID-19 information. Inside Facebook, staffers were warning that Mr. Zuckerberg's own platform, the globe-spanning powerhouse built on code he wrote 17 years ago, was compromising his effort. For more than a month, Facebook researchers warned that comments on vaccine-related posts, often factual posts of the sort Facebook sought to promote, were filled with anti-vaccine rhetoric aimed at undermining their message, internal documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal show. The comments ranged from personal objections, I had some, all the way to debunked falsehoods and conspiracy theories. You mean like the conspiracy theory that COVID might have come from a lab, which you guys now admit is most likely where it came from? They would have called that debunked back then, by the way, because of the Lancet letter, which was a piece of propaganda. The wave of negative comments worried global health institutions, including the World Health Organization and UNICEF. The documents say one internal Facebook memo cited, quote, anti-vaccine commenters that swarm their pages. In the weeks before Mr. Zuckerberg made his announcement, another memo said initial testing concluded that roughly 41% of comments on English language vaccine-related posts risked discouraging vaccinations. I feel pretty proud of us right now. I don't know about you guys, that it was 41% at the beginning before they started censoring everyone. Good for you guys. Good. Users were seeing comments on vaccine-related posts 775 million times a day, the memo said, and Facebook researchers worried the large proportion of negative comments could influence perceptions of the vaccine safety. Good. Any reasonable person should have been concerned about the safety of a shot that had not existed long enough for a longitudinal study on the side effects. I'm not saying and everyone had to make the same decision. There's a lot of things that go into that personal medical decision, including what comorbidities you have, what existing health problems you have, how old you are. There were lots of things that went into that. But they were trying to tell us we shouldn't care. One of those factors should not be the fact that we didn't know and still don't know what all the side effects are, possible side effects are. Even authoritative sources of vaccine information were becoming, quote, cesspools of anti-vaccine comments. The authors wrote, "That's a huge problem and we need to fix it," they said. Facebook's goal of protecting the rollout of the COVID vaccines, described in one memo as a, quote, top company priority, was a demonstration of Mr. Zuckerberg's faith that his creation is a force for social good in the world. Yeah. Isn't it Solzhenitsyn that talks about how all evildoers have to believe they're doing good, or some of them do. But the effort ended up demonstrating the gulf between his aspirations and the practical reality of the world's largest social platform, where the company's aims can bring it into conflict with its own users. Despite Mr. Zuckerberg's effort, a cadre of anti-vaccine activists flooded the network with what Facebook calls, quote, barriers to vaccination content. Is Two Sisters and Some Yarn still here? I feel like this is your doing, Two Sisters. I feel like you were one of these people creating a barrier. They used Facebook's own tools to sow doubt about the severity of the pandemic's threat and the safety of authorities' main weapon to combat it. By this summer, the prevalence of false and misleading vaccine information on Facebook prompted a public scolding from President Biden, who said the falsehoods were, quote, killing people, end quote. The vaccine documents are part of a collection of internal communications reviewed by the journal that offer an unparalleled picture of how Facebook is acutely aware that the products and systems central to its business success routinely fail and cause harm. Facebook's own research lays out in detail how its rules favor elites, its platforms have negative effects on teen mental health, its algorithms foster discord, and that drug cartels and human traffickers use its services openly. The documents show that Facebook has often made minimal or ineffectual efforts to address the issues and plays them down in public. Since the journal began publishing articles based on the documents, several lawmakers have expressed outrage at the revelations, and 2 senators have announced an investigation into Facebook's internal research on how its Instagram service affects young users. Some Facebook officials have become concerned that Mr. Zuckerberg or Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg may face questions from lawmakers about how their past public statements on these issues square with the company's internal assessments, according to people familiar with the matter. The company is also tightening the reins on how information is shared internally, the people said. Okay. So they don't want any more leaks, so they're going to get more creative about how they share information internally. The COVID-19 mess in particular strikes at the heart of Facebook's problem. Its users create the content, but their comments, posts, and videos are hard to control, given how Facebook built and runs its platform in ways that are fundamentally different from a company shaping its product or a publisher curating stories. Even when he set a goal, the chief executive couldn't steer the platform as he wanted. "We're focused on outcomes," this is a quote, "and the data shows that for people in the US on Facebook, vaccine hesitancy has declined by about 50% since January, and acceptance is high," Facebook spokesman Aaron Simpson said in a statement. The documents show Facebook's, quote, routine process for dealing with difficult challenges, he said. Narrowly characterizing leaked documents doesn't accurately represent the problem, and it also ignores the work that's been underway to make comments on posts about COVID-19 and vaccines safer and more reliable. Isn't this hilarious? Facebook, upon the files being released, instead of them saying, we are so embarrassed. We're so sorry we were censoring, and we took it upon ourselves to try and manipulate people into making a medical decision that we wanted them to make. Instead of apologizing for that, we're going to brag that we were able to censor enough and to push propaganda enough so that vaccine hesitancy declined by 50% since January. Isn't that funny? That's the way they view this leak. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I want to continue Facebook Files. This isn't the end. There's so much more interesting stuff in it. But that's enough. I think I've ranted enough for today. That was a lot of the COVID stuff. We will cover more of it here on Deprogrammed. If you're a new viewer, if you're new to the community, I wanted to apologize a little for how angry I was today. Not usually that angry, just this stuff about what we've allowed our government to do, big social to do, and just how divided we were in the past few years, and just really bothers me. And sometimes, again, that's why I try and use humor to counteract it and to get through it. But sometimes when I look at it, I get pretty pissed, like you guys. So anyway, come back. I promise we'll have more frivolity and fun. Wednesday night at 8:00 is going to be a really fun live Popped Culture, which is our regular Wednesday night show, 8:00 Central, with my friend Mystery Chris. We're going to be doing some woke reimaginings of movies. It's going to be a hilarious time. That's this Wednesday at 8:00 Central. And then Thursday, I'm going to have an interview coming out, and I will be promoting that this week and put it up in the community page so you know. That's going to be this Thursday and Friday at the same time, 1:00 Central is a live show. I hope you guys will tune in. We will have some fun. We all have our days, Ellen says. Take a break and do something fun and relaxing. Well, today I'm going to be on Force of Light's channel in a few hours. So come on over to Force of Light. We'll be having fun. And then tonight, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be on Toxic Femme. I have to check with those ladies and see if that's still happening tonight. But appreciate hanging out with you guys. And if you get a chance, watch some Peewee Herman today. If you want to have a laugh after Spicy Keri, as Laura says. Yeah, Spicy Keri's like I'm making my own voice hoarse. So I got to take a little break. But also this morning before this show, I got to hang out with Odin on Odin's movie blog, although now it's called OMB Reviews. I got to hang out in his private members only stream, and that was so much fun. If you are a member over there, go check it out. We talked about faith and film, and I was not angry then. That was before I got ready for the show and the Facebook files. Okay. I had fun with you guys. Hey, Dion. I'm going to take off now. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.